Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. I was over the moon when I inherited some money that allowed me to buy my own house, a beautiful home with a swimming pool. It was my little piece of paradise and I enjoyed relaxing in the water every day after work. However, my enjoyment was short-lived when I met my new neighbors, Mitch and Kim. They were friendly enough at first, but it was clear they felt entitled to use my pool whenever they wanted. Kim explained that the previous owners had allowed their children to come over and swim, and they were just continuing that tradition. I was hesitant, but agreed to let them come over occasionally as long as I was present in the backyard. However, it was not long before the kids were coming over every day, even when I had guests over. And then, to my horror, Mitch started showing up too, making inappropriate comments about my appearance in my bikini. I was uncomfortable and angry. This was not what I had signed up for. I decided to take action and build a fence around my backyard. It was a massive undertaking, and it took weeks to complete. Mitch and Kim were not happy about it, and they tried to guilt-trip me into taking it down. But I stood firm, and they eventually gave up. Or so I thought. One day I came home from work to find the fence had been broken, and there were footprints leading from my backyard to theirs. I knew it was them, and I was livid. I called the police and reported the vandalism, and they investigated. It turned out that Mitch had broken the fence, and he was arrested for trespassing and vandalism. I felt relieved, but I knew this was far from over. The incident had made me realize that I needed to take my safety seriously. I installed a security system with cameras around my backyard and reinforced the fence with stronger locks. I also started carrying pepper spray with me at all times. But even with all these precautions, I still felt uneasy. Mitch and Kim had stopped talking to me altogether, and I knew they were not happy about the fence or the arrest. I started to dread coming home from work, wondering if they had done anything else to my property. One night I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. I immediately grabbed my pepper spray and ran to the back door. I could see that the back window had been shattered, and someone had climbed inside. I knew it was them. I called the police again, and they arrived quickly. It turned out that Mitch and Kim had broken into my house looking for something to steal. They were caught red-handed, and they were both arrested for burglary and vandalism. I was shaken but relieved that they were finally caught. I decided to press charges and testify in court. It was a long and stressful process, but in the end, justice was served. Mitch and Kim were found guilty and were sentenced to jail time and community service. I felt a sense of closure, and I knew that I could finally relax in my own home. Update. A few months later, I met some new neighbors, a couple with 2 children. They were friendly and respectful, and we quickly became friends. I invited them over to swim in my pool, and they were grateful and respectful of my property. It was a stark contrast to Mitch and Kim, and it made me appreciate the good people in the world. I still had my security system and pepper spray, but I felt more at ease knowing that not all neighbors were bad. The next one is a pro-revenge story. Before I was born, my grandpa had just retired and decided, fuck it, I am going to live in the middle of a mountain that is in the middle of nowhere. He bought a piece of land far away from any city or village and started building a house. His only neighbors were an old lady and a crazy idiot. After half a year, he decided to permanently move in there and started building more and more things to accommodate himself. One of the things he built was a wall around his property and an outdoor toilet. This will be important later on. During this time, his crazy neighbor was trying to sell his property. My grandpa offered to buy it from him, but the guy declined, asking for 10 times more than my grandfather had offered. They got into an argument and ended all communication. Now the crazy bastard was out to get my grandpa. He would call communal services and make police officers and inspectors come on a 2-hour ride for every possible thing he could. We are talking about stuff like leaving a dog without a leash in a walled-off backyard, or having leftover building materials on the road, which my grandpa also built. Before that, they had a dirt road. Now, my grandpa did not mind, but every time the police were involved, they had to go over the backyard belonging to the old lady since work was going on, and the crazy neighbor had sealed off a gate connecting his and my grandpa's property with garbage. It did not look nice or smell nice, but my grandpa was busy with other stuff to keep removing it every night, only for the bastard to rebuild it the next morning. Even though my grandpa did not give a shit, the lady did, and she was on my grandpa's side. So one day when the officers came, She asked a couple of questions to these lovely people. She then contacted my grandpa. She learned two things. First of all, since the wall was built on my grandfather's land, he had all the rights to it. He could destroy it completely if he wanted. Second, filling a gate in the wall with shit was illegal, but my grandfather did not have the right to build a gate into someone else's yard without explicit permission either, and pursuing it in court would only end up with having to seal it off. She informed my grandpa about all of this, and soon they hatched a plan. They waited for 2 to 3 months for heavy autumn rains to start drowning the land. Then the old lady filed a formal complaint about the smell of the garbage. My grandpa pleaded guilty and signed off on a document that legally forced him to destroy the gate and remove the garbage from it. Now, the very same day my grandpa signed off on the documents, the biggest storms of the year started. It rained for 7 days before inspectors could come to remove the garbage and the gate. Now, my grandfather had previously cemented 3 of the 4 drains that were built in the wall. This, plus the mountain being steep, resulted in the wall acting like a dam for all the water that was coming in. Almost the entire yard was filled with water, eventually even lifting everything up from the outdoor toilet my grandfather had built. His neighbor tried everything he could to stop the inspectors from destroying that garbage-filled gate. He pleaded and pleaded, but he could do nothing. He did not own the wall, and he was the one making all the communal calls, and the inspectors grew to hate him. Furthermore, my grandfather had pleaded guilty, meaning that any form of complaint on the decision of the court from a third party was impossible, and deemed invalid at this point. After the inspectors removed the gate, a small sea of shit, construction materials, and water poured into the yard of the asshole and ended up watching the water destroy his entire yard, all while my grandpa and the nice old lady were drinking tea from her balcony. Today, while telling me the story, he said, "I felt like God unleashing the flood upon the sinful world back then," which made me chuckle because I know he is an atheist like me. The aftermath was even better. Needless to say, the guy needed to pay thousands to repair all the water damage and cleaning he had to do, all the while my grandfather's and old lady's house were completely untouched by any of it since they were on a lot higher ground. The best part is that since he admitted he was the one filling the gate with garbage to the inspectors, they made a note of that, and sometime later he received a written order from the court that he had to repay my grandpa for any property damage because of that. He ended up going to court, losing, after the old lady testified in my grandpa's favor, and having to rebuild the gate that was destroyed along with all the court fees. The guy moved out as soon as he could, and from what the new owner said, he sold it for less than half of what my grandfather offered him. The next one is a petty revenge story. Not my story, but a friend of mine told me this one recently. She lives on a decently large lot that has been in her family for a couple of generations. It used to be outskirts farmland, but development has been encroaching for a while. Her grandparents built her house, and she bought it when they both passed. It's kind of old and needs a ton of work. She's doing it a little at a time as she can afford it. A while ago, the lot next to hers was bought by a developer. They cleared the land to dirt and some apartments or something are going up soon. There was a pretty old chain link fence separating the very long property line, and the new landowner decided to replace it with a block wall. He knocked on her door one day to ask if she wanted to go halfsies. She said she'd like to, but apologized and said she doesn't have that kind of money. He got pissed she couldn't share the cost and said he was going to tell the contractor not to finish the side of the wall she could see, so the mortar would be all gooping out and look terrible. Fast forward to the day the building crew shows up to construct the fence. They knock on her door. The cleared land now has 0 water access, and they can't complete the job without it. She confirmed with the foreman that the landowner had told them not to finish one side of the fence. The foreman agreed that if they could use her garden hose for the day, they wouldn't make her side look crappy. Not only that, they also paid her $100 cash for the water, which they no doubt then billed to their client as part of the job. The next one is an entitled People story. Back in 2014, I was a backwaiter on a cruise ship in Hawaii. The ship was in port on the northern island of Kauai, and my front waiter, whom we will call Phil, not his real name, and I were working the dinner shift in the main dining hall. It was a typical steady evening until 2 ladies were seated in our section. One of the ladies, the Karen of the story, obviously had a little too much to drink. red in the face, drunken giggling, you get the idea. During dinner, the two ladies were having a great time, smiling, laughing, enjoying themselves. They were actually quite pleasant to wait on. The two ladies finished their dinner and left without any incident happening. Phil and I continued working, but about 30 minutes later, the drunk Karen returned. She walked right up to me and said, "My purse is missing." I replied, "Well, no one has sat at the table you and your friend were at since you left. So let's go over there and see if you left your purse behind." I started looking around the table and the drunk Karen shouted, "Don't look for my purse there." This startled me. After a moment of being a deer caught in the headlights, I asked, "Ma'am, this was where you and your friend ate your dinner. If you don't want me to look for your purse here, where should I be looking?" DK, "You and the other waiter took it, and I want it back right now." "Ma'am, we didn't take your purse. Is it possible that you might have left it in your cabin?" This pissed the drunk Karen off, and she snapped back, "DK, how dare you ask me such a stupid question? I would know if I left my purse in my cabin. I know you two took it, and I want it back right now." With her screaming, anyone and everyone who could hear her was now looking at us. Phil rushed over to try and calm her down while I went to find the restaurant manager. I filled him in on what was going on, and while walking back towards Phil and the drunk Karen, I warned him, "Whatever you do, do not ask her if she left her purse in her cabin. I did, and it only made her mad." The manager thanked me for the warning, but told me he had to ask her that as part of the line of questioning he had to do in this situation. Sure enough, the drunk Karen got even more pissed off when he asked her that question. So now we have a full-scale investigation on our hands. Our section had to be closed down. The passengers dining in our area were inconveniently moved to other sections of the restaurant, and the security team had to come in and question all of us. The drunk Karen got even more pissed off when the security team asked her if she left her purse in her cabin. After the questioning, the security team split up. Some went to look for DK's friend for additional questioning, while the rest went to look over the security footage. They told us this would take some time as there were multiple cameras that overlapped our section, and they had to review not only the dinner but also the 30 minutes after the dinner when DK and her friend left the restaurant to when she returned to see if we stole the purse. But they assured her that if we did steal it, they would see it in the footage. So now it's just the restaurant manager, one security guard, the drunk Karen, Phil, and myself waiting around in our empty section for the security team to finish their investigation. The manager and security officer did a good job keeping DK calm for a while, but she eventually lost her patience and screamed, "DK, why is this taking so long? I know those two stole my purse and I want it back right now. If you delay any longer, I will call the cops, have them come on board to arrest those two, and I will sue this cruise line." Upon hearing this, Phil had enough, and he started yelling back at the drunk Karen. I pulled him off to the side to try and calm him down, but he got upset at me and said, "Phil, how can you be so calm? That lady is threatening to call the cops and have us arrested. Aren't you the least bit worried that we could be going to jail?" "Why should we be worried? We didn't steal her purse. The security team will verify this when they finish looking over the security footage. The purse will be found somewhere and everything will be fine, so we have nothing to worry about." This did little to no good calming Phil down, so I decided to change my tactics and said in jest, "Think of it this way. We're both still on the clock. We're getting paid right now to stand around and do nothing while we wait for the security team to finish their investigation. Think of it like we're getting an extra paid break during what would otherwise be a standard busy dinner shift." Phil did not find this amusing, and he yelled back, "Phil, why aren't you taking this seriously? We could be going to jail and you are making jokes. Don't you have any pride? Where's your integrity?" So Phil's yelling at me. Drunk Karen is yelling at us. Phil is yelling back at the DK. Things were getting out of hand. Fortunately, a short while later, DK's friend walks back into the restaurant with the missing purse. When asked where she found the purse, you've probably guessed it by now. It was in the drunk Karen's cabin the whole time. I didn't think DK's face could get any redder from the booze she drank and from how angry she was, but she turned 3 shades of red darker from sheer embarrassment. She snatched the purse from her friend's hands and ran out of the restaurant. The friend tried to apologize on DK's behalf, but Phil rejected it. He yelled out, "Phil, that lady came in here, accused us of stealing her purse, threatened to call the cops and have us arrested. Yet when the purse was found, she runs out of here without apologizing to us first. What an idiot! The restaurant manager knew that emotionally Phil was in no condition to keep working, so he told him to clock off for the rest of the night to calm down. He could clock back in the next day once he's done so. The manager apologized to me and asked if I could do the close-down procedure for our section on my own. I had no problem with this, since when I was done, I would still be clocking off about an hour earlier than usual. As I was finishing up, the manager called me into his office and said, "Manager, I want to thank you for how you handled the situation earlier tonight. You were calm and collected while Phil lost his cool. Please don't think I was rewarding Phil by letting him off early for his bad behavior. You acted like the experienced front waiter while he acted like the immature back waiter. He wasn't in the right mindset to continue working tonight. And I promise in the next week or two I will find a night to give you off as a reward for how you responded to the situation." Drunk Karen never returned to the main dining hall to apologize in person, but she did write an apology letter, which she had her friend deliver on her behalf. Phil was still pissed and wanted to tear up the letter in a horrible rage. This time I managed to calm him down and convinced him to be the bigger man and just accept the letter. It may not be the apology he wanted, but we are still receiving an apology in the end. The next one is an entitled parent story. Well, now I know why my parents tried to force me to move back in on Thanksgiving. My mom was pregnant with kid number 6, and I only recently found out. To start things off, one of my siblings found my Reddit account not too long after my last post, and they showed it to our parents, who in turn showed up at my apartment screaming at me about how I had set them up to get my mom arrested and made the world think they are bad parents. Well, they are. I called them out while standing in my doorway about all the shit they've done, right down to leaving my siblings at my door on a day they knew I worked. That's bad parenting any way you look at it. And it didn't really matter that I set them up because I would have otherwise called the police on mom anyway when she left kids at my door. And in the end, it would have made no difference. My dad looked like he was ready to raise a fist to me, and I said that action alone proves me right that they're shitty parents. Then I stated that if he tried to hit me, it would turn out like last time. And I don't think his balls could take another hit from my boots. And yes, I was wearing them. Dad seemed to wince and clench his legs together at the thought of what I did to him last time. So he ended up leaving and dragging my mom out by the hand. And he yelled back before leaving the hallway that he expected me to pay them back for the fine they had to pay for child abandonment since it was all my fault. I told them to fuck off and that I didn't owe them shit. They didn't say anything back. It was just recently that I got some very bad news. My mom had been about 6 months pregnant and she lost the baby after a bad fall at home when she slipped on wet porch steps and landed face down on gravel. Honestly, I couldn't tell she'd been pregnant at all the time I saw her before that. She's a bit on the heavier side and has always been clumsy but not fat. Just enough that you really couldn't tell if she was pregnant or not. It is sad, and this was her first miscarriage. So she really wanted someone to blame, and that someone had to be me in her eyes because I'd destroyed the family by not helping and by costing them so much money. She and Dad showed up at my apartment again with her in crutches, just to say it was all my fault she lost the baby because I refused to come home and help when they needed me. It turned into a pretty big argument where I called them out on how they were just looking for free childcare and looking to blame me for something that's not my fault. It's not my fault they got pregnant again when Mom is 44 years old. And it's not my fault it happened anyway. Blame it on the rotten old porch Dad was too cheap to ever fix or replace. Well, my father laid his hands on me again when I said that, and I got a sharp right hook from him. And then I ended up kicking his ass one more time. I'd never really stopped working out at the gym, and I'm even stronger than I was when I took him down last Thanksgiving. He didn't stand a chance. I blanked out in a rage and ended up breaking his nose and knocking out both of his front teeth before my mom's screaming made me stop. Police were called, and I was put in cuffs while my father had to be taken to the hospital. Thankfully, the hallways for my apartment complex have CCTV, and I had my phone camera going behind me in my apartment as well that I started recording when my parents knocked. The footage easily showed that my father attacked me first, and I defended myself. I'm essentially in the clear as it was labeled self-defense. But now my parents are wanting to sue me for my dad's medical bills and the fine they had to previously pay. Dad can't go to work for some time due to the beating I gave him. He's in a neck brace with a broken nose, a black eye, 2 lost teeth, and who knows what else. His beard also had to be shaved off, which he's also very unhappy about. He was already pretty much dead to me even before this, so I guess this makes him double dead to me. And what little power he ever thought he had as my father is gone. I'm physically much stronger than him, and soon I'll be starting a new job that pays way better thanks to all my hard work these past few months. And maybe with a few years of saving, I'll get a much better place to live. My eldest sibling called me to say I was their hero for beating the shit out of Dad, and that they were planning on leaving just like I did when they turn 18. But it was my next sibling after them that found my Reddit posts after hearing them on YouTube, and that led to my parents finding out because my mom heard them talking about it, and made them show my post to her. They said she was enraged and started breaking things. My siblings have apologized that they let Mom and Dad find out, and that they would have never said anything if they'd known Mom was listening. Both have also said that they're happy there won't be another baby, though. They're already having to do a lot of the childcare for my parents right now, and they hate it. They admitted to blaming me for leaving at first too, but they realize that when you become an adult, you deserve to take your path. It's still up in the air whether or not my parents will try to sue me, but I think I can safely say that it'll be a loss for them if they do. One of my friend's uncles is a lawyer, and he said he'd represent me if my parents decide to sue. He also says that they don't have much of a case since it was self-defense. And to my parents, who will probably read this, I only have this to say. Leave me the hell alone. You don't own me or my siblings. And when the time comes for them to be able to leave at 18, I'll help them get out of your house. You both have always been selfish narcissists. It's not my fault Mom lost the baby, and it's not my fault you had such a hard time without me in the house to be your free babysitter. Consider that broken nose and lost teeth as a good reason to never even touch me again. And don't forget that I have only told a fraction of the shit that went on in my life thanks to y'all here. If I wanted to, I could post story after story of the shit that went on in my childhood. But that wouldn't bring me satisfaction. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.